Welcome back to the Frontier Podcast, the show where we interview the pioneers pushing technology and humankind into the future and going deep on the original cypherpunk values of cryptography, digital sovereignty, and the limits of human ingenuity. I'm your host, Tom Mitchell-Hill, and today I'll be joined by my co-host, Daniel Barr, the co-founder of SpaceComputer. Thanks for joining me, Daniel.
Cheers, Tom. Awesome to get on the pod again.
Today, we are speaking with Dovey Wan. Dovey is a multi-cycle crypto pioneer, having been actively involved in the crypto space since 2017. She's the founder of Primitive Crypto, a frontier prop investment firm that is explicitly not a VC firm, but still cuts VC checks. Dovey has been standing at the frontier of crypto and tech for over a decade, working as the managing director of DHVC, or Danhua Capital, a VC firm focused on enterprise, consumer, health, and fintech sectors. She boasts an extremely impressive record of investments in and contributions to the crypto and blockchain industry, featuring projects like the OG DeFi Kyber Network, Cosmos, Tendermint, Handshake, Blockfolio, Starkware, Optimism, GMX, Athena, just to name a few. Welcome to the Frontier Podcast, Dovey. We're extremely grateful to have you on the show.
Happy to be here. Yeah, so I definitely feel like a boomer in this space. So the mental aging is insane. I think like that's why probably I spend much more time just like really caring about my own health and longevity and all that. And then like the other thing is that every cycle I have seen pretty tragic, just like it's a very tragic death, like just from friends around us. So I think like that's why I think it is not about, because I know like when it comes to crypto, people always talk about just like getting rich and like pre-rich and post-rich, like this kind of vibe. But at the end of the day, it's not about being like ultra high net worth, right? So it's about being like ultra high. So it is not about being ultra high net worth, and it's more about being ultra anti-fragility. That's also what tying back to the original like cypherpunk like spirit, right? So it's about anti-fragility. It is not about like having like that much money in your bank account. Yeah.
That's interesting. Talk to me more about anti-fragility. What do you mean by that, and how does that link in with like the cypherpunk ethos in your eyes?
Yeah, and when it comes to anti-fragility, right? And So I have been sharing this with a lot of my friends, and then so you guys have seen what happened to like Jack Ma, and you have seen like what happened, like all this like major attack on like all the publicly visible billionaires out there, right? And so I think like being like a very stealth mode billionaire is like has a much higher degree of freedom than being like a publicly visible billionaire out there. And also imagine in the future, I have. And I have this mental model for like many years, and then imagine there would be like a major scientific discovery that can probably invent the same level of like nuclear weapon, and then so it can be whatever things out there, or like it can be it can be the same level of like CRISPR, right? And so like that kind of things that can bioengineer your baby and like all that, and so supposedly like the inventor of that thing, So in order to just like really keep that thing like under stealth mode, or like really just like make it publicly open, but like without revealing much of the inventor's identity. And so I really think in the future, like once like Bitcoin probably hits like once Bitcoin hit $1 million US, and then we should have this Nakamoto Award, and we should have the Nakamoto Award to really award that. So to really award anonymous inventors, and so like the anonymous scientists, and then also all these like anonymous like social journalists, and then so who can really dig into like a very like in-depth like investigated can really dig into this like super dark investigation of like certain like social phenomena, right? And so that's how we can make sure like these things can have like the level of that's how we can make sure the things that have the same level of the the same level of the degree of freedom, then potentially we can also ensure like the actual human liberty. Yeah.
So
okay.
maybe to kind of try and paraphrase about the values of cypherpunk, a part of the anti-fragility is that someone can maintain their comfortable private life rather than being under the scrutiny of constant attacks by haters or authorities, etc. So like you kind of want to get that individual self-sovereignty, and that future is something that crypto definitely enables, whether it's like Nakamoto, the original inventor, or any other aspects of being self-sovereign. Like for me, for example, it's self-sufficiency on a farm, but basically any other aspect of taking care of your liberties. Is that kind of like the direction you're thinking, you're taking it, Davi?
I think that's like definitely a key part of that. And then also, I think there's like not a coincidence that many of us are like who are early in crypto are also very into longevity as well, because like how Finney was also among the pioneers like in like cryogenics, right? And then also since the inception, the cypherpunk movement and like crypto people, and we all have like centered around like two core beliefs, and one is to build this like immutable ledgers to form the immutable truth, and like the other one is also to issue like meta sovereign asset to really empower the sovereign individuals. So I think like these are all interconnected with each other, and then like also like muscle itself is like the human organ that has the best anti-fragility traits, right? Because like the more we challenge it, and like the stronger it gets.
Yeah, they say that when people get wealthy, they seek for eternal life, which is longevity, and space, basically like conquer more places. So that's maybe a part of the pursuit for immortality and the vastness of space, right?
I think like the space pursuit, I think is okay. So I probably hold a different opinion when it comes to like the space and just like get out of the Earth, like kind of like pursuit. And I think just that the Earth currently feels very very zero sum, right? And like all the things that happening out there just feels extremely zero sum, and like the geopolitics environment versus like the geopolitics environment currently is like totally different than like 50 years ago, and I think like the politician nowadays, and their job is not to form consensus, right? And like having a consensus is basically become like contrarian, and then also like the middle class is fading, and like the middle class is basically fading everywhere, and it's not just in US, and like you have seen like what happened to Europe, and like fertility rate like Korea now is like sub 0.8%. Yeah, so like, theoretically speaking, probably in like in 100 years, and like there won't be any Koreans out there, which is crazy. So like that's why I think like Earth feels pretty zero sum, and we don't have the same aspiration than before, especially when it comes to like Gen Z and like Gen Alpha. I was just reading a paper, I think a few days ago, really shocked me. So the Gen Alpha is like just like they are not even hitting puberty, right? Like Gen Alpha girls, so they spend over like 5 billion in Sephora. Like that's like extremely zero sum to me, and so like why consumerism, like so like the consumerism has like progressed like so far that they basically just like stuff like all the kids like down to the throat. I think like the space pursuit is just like the Earth feels like very very zero sum, and we just want to get out of it, and then like also like that can set like the aspiration value anchor for the next generation, and I think like that's why many of us are very very into the pursuit of like space. Yeah.
I have a question there. Do you think that we can kind of balance the pursuit of space with like a non-zero sum kind of like planetary arc? Or do you think it's kind of like from your perspective, do you think that space is like the next frontier that we need to move into to fix things on Earth? Or is space the next frontier that we go to because things on Earth are cooked?
I think like the space pursuit, well, like the inspiration or like the aspiration for many of the space entrepreneurs that I've known, and it's because like Earth feels like zero sum, and I think just like practically speaking though, like space, and there's no much like there's so many things that you can conquer in space, because it's like a blue ocean, right? So it's like a blue ocean, and there's not much competition. Like say for instance, like the current International Space Station, like like there's no any competitor like to the current International Space Station until just 2 years ago when like China launched their own version, right? So like the Tianlong station was formally completed in, I think, in late 2022, right? And so operationally, so the Chinese Space Agency right now is running their own like regular like 6 months like crew rotation, and which was never happened until just 3 years ago. So like there's no competition at all when it comes to like the International Space Station. And then also what we have seen, just like the whole trend is that I think like founding space is something just like extremely high pack, so like extremely high capex. So like a lot of so many of these like government and then trying to shift towards like more like private version of the LEO destinations. So like things can have like more commercial stations and then rather than just like government only asset. So from this perspective, and then so I think like this is a lot of parallel to the early so to the early stage of internet, right? Like internet also started as a like a DARPA thing, like as like a government thing, and so like so I think just like purely from like a market perspective, and then so we have seen the cracks has been opened up, and then so the government is like leaning towards like funding, just like being the customer of like all the commercial company rather than just like doing their own thing. Yeah, so I think just like both like theoretically, just like inspirationally, theoretically, and like probably speaking, like space is, like the just like the like this so like the space is like large enough like for like all the new entrepreneur and like especially from like private sector to pursue.
I would say though that like with space, it's definitely booming, but it's still extremely early and it's still extremely capital intensive, and there's like a really long way to go. So it's super exciting, but I think that it's one of those things. Like I've been in other technologies, whether it's quantum computing that is starting to like get to commercialization, or crypto that we're almost 20 years since Satoshi. With space, launches are getting more affordable, but still big structures, like you mentioned the space station, or VAST that is building a alternative space station and space tourism and other stuff. These are still things that are very, very early on, and then still we're looking at launching small satellites and things that service Earth are still quite relevant, and part of also what we're doing with SpaceComputer is that. And I think there's going to be quite a lot of foundational stages before we get to this like multi-planetary species and stuff, which obviously is the part of the sci-fi objective that inspires everyone.
I think like just like the few steps is, and now we have like SpaceX, and like SpaceX is a logistic company for the space, right? And so like once that Starship is there, and I think the payload cost gonna down like probably 100x, and like once we can lower down like the two order of magnitude on like the payload cost, and so we can potentially to build the real estate in the space, like especially around Leo, right? So like Leo is the first like Leo first, and then Moon, and then Mars, and then so like this is like how like the progression gonna be. But first we need to have the logistic company and also the real estate company out there. And I think when it comes to SpaceComputer, SpaceComputer is not a like an infrastructure, like so it is not a physical infrastructure company, right? And like SpaceComputer, like my mental model for like SpaceComputer in the future, it's kind of like Starlink, but like without the satellite. And also it's like a Starlink for so it's like a Starlink for the in-space computation. Like Daniel, like do you think that analogy clicks?
I would say maybe something like Starlink would be built with SpaceComputer, but I'm thinking about it more as a settlement and smart contract platform. So more like a Bitcoin/Ethereum that is space native, and then on top of which you can start having the space native economy, some of which could be the communication layer, which is a Starlink equivalent. But interesting, because initially we were not planning to do much hardware, but we realized that even though there's a lot of more offerings and solutions available, we still need to do some of the hardware specs, and it's now the missions that we're working on is hardware that we will ultimately be engaged on sending satellites to orbit, and we're looking at it as kind of like the boot node validator set that are initially there, but ultimately we would want to include more satellite providers, and whether it's communication providers, imaging, other services. So I don't know if purely the Starlink, but maybe a Starlink layer 2 or something like this could be could be.
Yeah, so I remember in like the early days, and we were like talking about what is the position for like SpaceComputer, and yeah, so like a very straightforward and can be a little bit lousy mental model is like DP in the sky, right? And it's like a DP in the sky and like leveraging the existing onboard satellite, like to leverage the existing onboard satellite. So the onboard satellite compute for like either for security guarantee, because it can be far beyond what it can be far beyond what like the Earth like trusted hardware can offer, and then also like it can be a really good like resilient like hardware in the era of this like rising geopolitics like tension, and so like that's basically the ultimate anti-fragility play.
Yeah, root of trust in space. Yeah, so it's more
Yeah.
secure than TEs on Earth, and we've seen the TE fails a few times over recently. So yeah, like more and more that there's nuance in how the security model for having the physical isolation in space is becoming interesting for people to pick at SpaceComputer. Yeah.
As the kind of non-technical guy sitting here, I do have a question for both of you that I'm interested in. How, because Daniel, you were talking about the fact that, you know, it is still incredibly like early for space industry. We're seeing kind of launch costs be brought way down, which means that we can expect to see a lot more stuff get into space. How quickly do you see like industry, commerce, and business being conducted in space, and to what size? It's kind of a general question, but directionally, how much stuff do you think we're going to start seeing, like low Earth orbit, but then also actually moving out to either the moon or to Mars? Just general, broad kind of scope question here.
So maybe we can look at the current status as a way to extrapolate. Today, on average, SpaceX launches a Falcon 9 mission, I think, about every second day, roughly. So last year they launched 7,500 satellites for Starlink alone, and then the excess capacity is typically sold to other missions, which is missions similar to what we're launching with. So if you're having today, so 90% of what you have currently in orbit, like more than 90%, is Starlink. This is something that I don't know, like some people out of space sector don't know, but majority of what actually orbits above us in the sky is Starlink. Everything else is like small potatoes compared to that. And as Davi mentioned, SpaceX is kind of like the logistics company in that way, but in some respects I look at it a bit like Apple is the iPhone company, so SpaceX is the Starlink company that became like the product that is championed, and they have also the confidential equivalent for the government sector. Blue Origin is getting into the launch business. The more the launch programs are going to be solved, the more you'll start seeing huge boost, probably like tenfold of where it is today in LEO. And then actually even before Moon, there's high Earth orbit, there's a mesospace. So there's still quite a lot to uncover for things that are purely servicing Earth. I think that we're probably like multi-decades away from exhausting this. Like there's still plenty. It's a blue ocean, like Davi mentioned. When will we get to Moon and Mars? To be honest, like I feel that it's one of those things that it's super fascinating and inspiring, but I'm not gonna hold my breath on like, okay, we're gonna solve it in the next couple of years. It's like this is gonna be a pretty big effort to get a colony in Mars and all these things. It's, you know, like it's not clear yet how. It's like, of course, we're all excited about it, but it's going to take some time. But yeah, I mean, Davi, like you've been very interested recently in other space. I know that you've got into other space in your portfolio. So what's your take on rate of development and kind of trajectory as a whole?
Yeah, so I think like that's one thing that people are very probably just like the space is still very like the industry is still like tiny, and or like tiny in the sense of how many people are like really paying attention to that, and like other than SpaceX and like few other like space other than a few big other like space commercial companies, and then so like no one is actually paying much attention to that. But just like give you like a number wise, right? And then like the number wise, and we already, because like the only unit economic metrics that we have to pay attention to is how much cost per kilogram, because like you have to send stuff to the space, and then so like that's just like boils down to the single unit economic metrics. And so like the cost currently per kilogram when it comes to launch, it used to be around like 80,000 per kilogram, and then like now down to just like 2,000 per kilogram. So like the cost itself already like down more than like 90%. And then like also some of these like very heavy lift like vehicles and can probably down the cost down to 100,000 ish, and so for like heavy lift. So I think we have already like progressed a ton from there, and it's just like it's basically like the shitcoin cost. So it's basically like the shitcoin price. I have been just like joking with my space protocol company founders that they're just like driving down the cost of like per kilogram per like kilo, and then when it comes to like the shitcoin founders, just like the altcoin founder or like memecoin founders, they're basically driving down their like own like token price per 90-80% like every cycle. And it's kind of similar when it comes to the space industry. It's like every 4 to 5 years, and then so like the payload cost like gonna down 80%. So like that's why I'm very bullish on that, because like that's like a good reduction. It is not like my coins going down, right? I think like when it comes to Starship, and I don't have like a number at the top of my head, but like what can drive further cost reduction, like when it comes to the payload cost. One is the reusability, like especially when it comes to booster like stages. And then like also the larger payload capacity, so we can have like economy of scale, and then also like Daniel has mentioned, we can have a higher launch cadence, right? And then so then we can just like spreading out like all like the fixed costs and like sound costs like to just like a cohort of like clients, and then also there's can be like mass production, like just like the manufacturing itself, like because like the problem with all this like government founding rocket company or just a government founding rocket or like space station like space station initiative, the problem of that is like they just like outsource everything. So they just like outsource everything to everyone else, especially for the US. And like why China can launch like Tianlong, like the China's own version like space station in such a short period of time is that China basically built everything in house. So they just import like all the raw material and then just like build everything in house. I think that's what the competence. So like if we can try to make a market of it, right? Because like that's like the beauty of like private sector. So like the private sector is always like down to like cost optimization, right? So it's a productivity centric. So when it comes to this, all these like public sector like funding projects, it's just like it's bureaucracy centric. So like that's why I'm pretty bullish on that when it comes to the next 4 years or like 5 years for the next like space cycle, because we have the crypto cycle and we also have the space cycle. And like space cycle is usually like 4 to 6 years. So like 6 to 8 years ish, yeah. And so it basically took like SpaceX like 20 years like to really ship their first like real human in the rocket. So yeah, so I think when it comes to like Starship in the future, and like the Starship will probably cost like as little as like 10 million per flight in the future. So it's extremely affordable. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe Tom, about your comment on when will we see a space native economy? I think we're starting to see the buds of it. Like for example, you have companies that are dealing with monitoring at a relatively high resolution of space objects. And these things are only possible today when you're able to launch a camera onto a satellite at a relatively cheaply price compared to what you'd be able to do 10 years ago. You would already have these solutions 10 years ago, but it was only for like government and low res and like low frequency. Now you have more and more things that are starting to service it. Also because data payloads from Earth to space are actually still quite expensive. So it's not only about launching the actual satellite, right? You also need to communicate with it. You have higher latency. If it's low Earth orbit, it actually moves around, so you need to connect either through ground station or alternative networks like what we're doing. And then if you need upgradability for the software, or you need to download data to analyze it, process, and then make some decision based on those data. So you do start seeing more and more solutions that are starting to be built natively for space, like to build software that essentially runs edge compute, and you can make decisions based on AI models deployed on the satellites without having to transport the data and make decision and do it.
Talking about that, Daniel, have you seen like Jensen mentioned that he wants to send a data center into space?
Yeah, the space-based data center has been a hot meta for quite a while.
Right.
And actually, there's the first H100, I think, with the Star Cloud guys recently launched, I think, just a few days ago.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I think we are seeing a convergence of this Moore's law, like coming from like all different angles, right? Like we have the scaling law when it comes to AI, and then we have I think like Moore's law is still intact for probably for compute, but I'm not sure like up to like 3 nanometer. And then we also have seen this Moore's law drop for payload costs when it comes to like space launch. And then so like if like Starship gonna be there, so like once we have like vehicles like Starship, and like the payload cost gonna be probably like less than like gonna be less 100 like US dollar per kilogram, and then so like that's another like 10x reduction. So we have seen like the Moore's law just like convergence, like there's a major convergence of like Moore's law and this like scaling law from like all different angles. So like that's why I'm extremely bullish for like all different kind of like space application.
Bullish on the space economy and the multiplanetary future of our species. Let's go. Dovey, I did want to ask you, I wanted to zoom out a little bit, and I wanted to talk a little bit about your background in crypto, and then also like, I don't know, how you got kind of your interest peaked in space as well. But I'd love to start with like what got you into crypto. I understand that you were like PM at eBay for a while, and there's a bit of crossover with like Chris Dixon coming in when his company acquired eBay. Can you run me through like your background, how you got started, and why you decided to stay in the crypto space as well?
Let me just try to recollect my memory, and it's been so long. Okay, now it's 2025, right? Okay, yeah. So I finished my college. So I finished my master's school from Carnegie Mellon, and in 2011. And so like after that, so I moved to Bay Area and like started my like career in eBay. So being like a PM there, like being like a product manager there, and then just like looking into all this, like because I'm a huge fan of like marketplace marketplace, like just like the whole design of marketplaces. And I remember there was like 2012, so probably late 2012. And then so that's when my like manager back in the day, and then so he asked me to do this like comparative analysis on the other marketplaces. And that's when I discovered like Silk Road. And I got so obsessed about it, and because it's peer-to-peer, right? So it's basically like Craigslist, but so it's kind of like Craigslist, but it's more than Craigslist. And so I got very obsessed with it, and then like that's when I discovered Bitcoin and like all that. And then also the other coincidence is just my mom, like all the Asian parents, and then so she she wanted me to buy property in Bay Area and like San Francisco, but it's extremely hard to get the money out of China, and because when it comes to mainland China, and there's only like 50K US dollar like capital, so there's only like forex there's only like 50K forex exchange like quota per individual. So it's extremely hard to get money out. So
is that 50K per year or like per month?
It's like 50K per year per person. Yeah.
50 a year? Oh,
yeah,
no.
Yeah, it is still the case, and it's just like getting like more strict. And then also like Korean has the same rule as well. Like if you guys think like Korean is like complete open capitalism, whatever, it's not the case. It's that every nation state, so they always have to control capital flag. And so like Korean has this capital control as well. So like that's why we can see all the kimchi premium on the local Korean exchange, because like the liquidity is not fluid, right? And
this is a small interjection. This is a very interesting insight on the fact that some people think that in developed countries, crypto is not useful because the financial system already works. And this is a great example for where Korea and China, which are sure, China has like more like a poverty in some faraway province, but generally like quite advanced countries still has really interesting, unique utility for crypto that is quite widely used.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, so like that's when like towards the end of like 2012, and then yeah, so me and my parents and we just use like Bitcoin for just like moving money out, and yeah, but I wish I didn't buy the house to be honest, and then but like who knows? Yeah, so like back in the days that we bought a Bitcoin from like BTC China, and then like also on like Taobao. It's I think like the fun thing about so like so it's all this like actual P2P. It's like the actual P2P market. So I have to test someone on like Taobao because at back in the day Bitcoin was listed under this like virtual. It's like, do you remember like back in the day if you guys want to play some online game or some whatever, like you have to top up your like phone charge, right? And then so Bitcoin was listed under the same category of all these virtual things. It's like virtual digital goods on like Taobao. And then so we either have to do that or like we just buy BTC from BTC China. And then immediately we short a BTC and then move to like Bitstamp and then just exchange to like US dollar. And then like Bitstamp back in the day, I remember that they can only do like banking wire. And so, yeah, so like there was some 2012, 2013, I forgot. And anyway, so fast forward, and 2013 was my first cycle when it comes to this like price plummet down. And yeah, just like anyone, I really got into this like because like the dopamine is real, right? Because like you can see things that just like freaking pump like 3xing a day. Yeah, just like anybody else. And then like that's my first like crazy cycle. And then and also I remember that was in the day many engineers and just like early Bay Area crypto people around us, and then so we were just like day traders. And then so you always have to lose your money in your first cycle and then be the day trader. And so like that's just like the pattern I have seen over and over. And it's like every cycle so it's like every cycle all my new friends like came into crypto, so they always have to do this like day trading thing. It's just like trading different things, right? So just like back in the day we were like trading Bitcoin or the color coins, and then all this like quote unquote fair launch POW coin back in the day, because like, there's many of these like POW coins. And then later cycle is just like NFT. Like NFT is actually color coin on steroid, right? And so there's so many like similarity that can echo back to the original like the color coin, because like when it comes to NFT, it's just like we have like more metadata and like things like that, and then it's on Ethereum, like better liquidity. And then last cycle we have like BRC20, like that's basically like another version of like Bitcoin color coin, right? And so there's a lot of this similarity over cycles, but like
what is it? NAP? What are you referring to? NAP, or what's the acronym? What was
It was
the
BRC
like
BRC20s.
Yeah, so like BRC.
Which is like
yeah,
shitcoins on Bitcoin. It was sorry, the Bitcoin token standard. I'm sorry if that was an offensive terminology.
Yeah, and yeah, so like just back to eBay Day. Yeah, so like eBay Day was just like it's a really good like eBay Day, like because it's a marketplace. And then so I found out about Zero, and then so Zero got me into like the Zero itself is also pretty cool. So I'm not sure you guys like still have access. Well, like we don't have access, but it is carefully designed like for illegal transaction, and which is very eye-opening for me. And then so that's also probably back to our like earlier conversation on, right? And then so like the the absolute freedom can be also scary, right? So you probably don't want absolute like freedom. And then so that can be very metaphysical conversation on like what level of like freedom you want, and then like how to design the protocol carefully, and like not to really abuse the level of like freedom and like privacy. Yeah, so I don't have a good answer on that. And I think just like in like a parallel universe, and then so let's say the government is like extremely friendly to things like Silk Road, and I think we will have this like fentanyl, this this crazy fentanyl like disaster probably like 10 years earlier, right? So like now we have this all this fentanyl problem in San Francisco, and you still see like fentanyl fall, like all the fentanyl banter, and yeah, so like that also got me thinking on like regulation, like even though the cypherpunk spirit is a very anti-regulation, but I still think for the average people, and they don't have control, and then they don't have like self-discipline, and also they don't have like a know-how to really like distinguish like what's good and like what is bad, and so yeah, so like how to actually protect them, right? And then so like that's also like it's not just in crypto. Like if we look at like consumer internet, like Zuckerberg has a very like strict rule for like his own kids when it comes to like screen time. But the thing is that he is building like the biggest like time sink and like doom scrolling like machine for like all the other kids, right? And so I think like when it comes to consumer internet, like it's also the same thing, that like all the founders are following this like typical like drug dealers like ethos to say don't get high on your own drug. It's just
maybe to interject there about the freedom principles, like a mental model that I have, and I think it's very relevant for your like how you're trying to associate it to the cypherpunk and crypto. Freedom is something that we all aspire for, but freedom without discipline is chaos.
Yep.
And you basically, if you eat like, bad food and stuff, your health will decay. Freedom with discipline is prosperity, which is, let's say, take the example of Singapore, right? Like there is liberties and stuff, but there's also strong discipline, and then it becomes a place that is prosperous. I think when you're designing a protocol, crypto protocol, equally, on the one hand, you want the lowest level of the protocol to be as credibly neutral as you can. Like you want to have Bitcoin, Ethereum, SpaceComputer protocol, whatever, something that is accessible permissionlessly. On the other hand, you want to aspire for code is law, that it's something that is not possible to tamper with. And also you want to have services that are built on top that are able to exclude the bad guys. Let's say you don't want to have North Korean hackers or Iranian regime getting some funds that are illicit in order to bypass and somehow like get wealthy, right? So it's like it's a question of how to create the rule set that actually serves the greater good, rather than try to think about it as anarchy that actually leads nowhere. I think that anyone with a little bit more sophisticated thinking understands that ultimately it's not just about anarchy, it's also about what's the greater good here from a permissionless technology and cypherpunk values. Free speech, etc.
At a psychological level as well, it's like ultimate freedom is also anxiety as well, if you think about it, because if there's no optionality, it's just like being dropped in the desert and being told, well, go a certain way. It's like, which way? So, technically you're free, but if there's no clear-cut kind of direction or directionality for you, then it's just overwhelming.
Just like add on to that, like there's a very interesting survey that like arranged marriage, like the perception of like the level of like perceived happiness is much higher when it comes to arranged marriage. So I think like that can also echo like Tom's point really well, right?
Yeah, this is going so far on a tangent, but I did see an interesting thing with Palmer Luckey talking about this as well. Like he was saying that this idea, this like much more like Western, like finding yourself, finding your partner, going on some like giant spiritual journey idea is just such a fallacy, because he's like, well, for thousands of years, humans had very, very happy, healthy relationships, and they typically knew maybe several hundred, maybe a few thousand people if they lived even in a large city, but like that was it. Like your actual limit of people that you would meet in your lifetime was the town that you grew up in. Maybe you'd go over somewhere else, but yeah, he was like, it's a trap. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. Dovey, I am quite interested in, so you've gone from eBay PM, you've used Bitcoin to get out of China, you're obsessed with the design of like Silk Road peer-to-peer marketplaces. Walk me through the process of founding Primitive. What led you to think I want to start like a prop capital firm that also does like VC adjacent activities? Yeah,
there was a 2018 bear market. It was pretty deep in the 2018 bear market. So me and my retired co-founder, like Eric Melcher, So we have been working together for like many projects together, and then and I think like 2017, because like 2017 was like my first actual cycle as like an investor, and then but back in the day I was still handling all the other all the other investments of our firm, and I think I also did like decent investment on like the other sectors like fintech and marketplaces and like autonomous driving, etc., etc. Say for instance, so like back at DHVC, I led investment in like Figure, Moneylion, blah blah blah, and like they all went public. And also like did like Series A, like just like personal check into Flatsport and a few other like really big like SaaS company. Also like I also did like Rippling and like Series A like SaaS, and so I think I did okay as a just like a junior like tech investor. But like crypto is the only sector I'm just like every day I woke up, like when I see my portfolio, right? Because I have like so many different portfolio. It's like if you go to like a restaurant, and then you will naturally gravitate towards like a certain menu that you want. And so it's like having a buffet, but you only want to eat certain things, right? Like that's when you figure out, oh, I really like this food. So that's what happened to me is like, okay, I woke up every day and then I looked at my portfolio. There's so many different sectors, but I only want to dig into what happened in my crypto portfolio. And that's when I realized, I should probably just like drop the other things, and then I should probably just drop the other things, because like the other things is just like very consuming, and like the board meeting and like all that, right? And so like yeah, so like that's when it comes to the 2018 bear market, and then so I'm like, yeah, so I really want to just like drop all the other stuff and then just like all in like crypto investment. And then my retired co-founder Eric Melcher, like he was like one of the most, like I would say, like the most international and global individual I have seen. And like he's a Jew, and like he's like a local, like he born and raised in a local Bay Area here, and like grew up in Palo Alto, but like he can speak like fluent Chinese. And so he basically did his undergrad in like Peking University, and then being like the first undergrad in biology, because if you want to learn biology as American in like Chinese, and then imagine the level of like difficulty there, right? And so like he's my best friend, and then so like in 2018, like Eric and I, we were
He
like,
was working for Li Xiaolai, right? Before, from memory.
yeah, so like he was working for Xiaolai, and Xiaolai is considered as the godfather for like Chinese crypto, and so they basically own the entire supply chain of like crypto, and so they own like the biggest exchanges, so they own the biggest investment fund, and like Xiaolai was also very instrumental in the whole education of like crypto and like Bitcoin in like China back in the day. And so like he's like a very like prominent teacher in general. So like he's like he's like a mentor for many of our generation back in the day. Yeah. Anyway, so 2018 bear market, and like me and Ari was like, yeah, so we should just do these things ourselves, and then we have enough money that we make from like the bull market in like 2017, and then I don't want to do anything other than crypto, so like that's how Primitive started. Yeah.
You were in the 2018 like bear market. You've done your prop fund stuff here. What was your experience with the 2020 like DeFi Summer? How did that go for you?
Oh, like 2020 DeFi Summer was okay. Let me think about this. I think we were farming everything, and then yeah, yen, Wi-Fi, whatever, and like I think the DeFi Summer was like the DeFi Summer sort of like the DeFi Summer sort of like bring back a little bit of the Cypherpunk spirit, because it's a relatively fair access, right? It's a relatively fair access, and then also like it's just okay. I remember back in the day in DeFi Summer, and like the smart contract security, like probably it's just like people are looking for thrill, like because it was COVID, it was like lockdown, and I remember we were looking into all the farms, and then like one of my DeFi farmers, like team member, like he said something very, very it's like okay. So I would probably just like speak out loud. So he was saying that aping into the farm without any smart contract security check is like having sex with a condom. Like that's when I learned about, oh, so why the thing becomes such a big thing, and then people just like aping all the farms, and then without any security check is like during lockdown, and so especially for guys, and guys look for a thrill, and that's when I realized there's definitely different psychological, like it's like the psychological, it's a psychological level. Men and women are designed differently, right? And like currently, like there's no physical war for like men to fight. So like that's why they have to have some other outlet for their like testosterone, like either meme coin trading, like unsecure like smart contract farming, or whatever things out there, right? And so
What an
like that's what I
interpretation.
so because I was
What's the
very
meme? Men used to go to war. Now they trade meme coins. Like this is the
yeah.
this
So
is what we've
and I
got.
really think that because like evolutionary we're not that evolved, right? And then so we're like evolutionary we are like not that evolved, and then so like what about men now, like they don't go to war, and then so they're sitting in the basement, they're sitting in the small just like these like cages, like especially during like COVID, right? And so like that's why my theory when it comes to the DeFi summer is the access like testosterone in the form of like financial populism. And yeah, so probably this is like a different angle from many others. And then we have like access testosterone, we have like access liquidity, and then we have this like financial populism forming up, right? From like GameStop and like all that. So it's all these like three forces combined, and like that, so that made like DeFi summer boom. And yeah, so I think like DeFi summer, yeah. So we did a lot of things, and then but that's my key takeaway on understanding like the male psychology. Yeah.
I liked it. That's the first time I've heard like an Evo bio theory as to why. I've heard various renditions of like the financial nihilism mixed in with financial nihilism would be more for like meme coins in 2023, 24. But like, yeah, I think that's the first time I've heard the biological substrate get put in there for like excess male testosterone, high risk taking, stuck inside, bored. What are they going to do? It's actually a pretty bulletproof and retroactively correct thesis. W, what do you make of DeFi, the status of DeFi now? I think that the recent like balancer hack kind of frightened people again, and it re-sparked that conversation around essentially the risk that you're taking for a lot of DeFi, and like the amount of like DeFi hacks that there are compared to like the yield that you kind of see on, you know, what a lot of people consider to be like safe investments of like, oh, well, I'll just park a lot of stable coins or a lot of ETH or a lot of something somewhere and get like a 5 to 7% return. And I think people have, at least very recently post balancer hack, that idea has fallen out of favor a bit. How do you see DeFi kind of progressing
And
moving forward?
Athena also had recently.
And Athena.
So probably we have to take a step back on like the capital allocators like profile. Because at this cycle, like the capital allocators profile like changed quite a bit. Like we still have our like crypto native like people and like on-chain capital, right? And then but like ETF and like all the other like TradFi instruments, and really just like change like the capital allocators mix. And like that's why also we haven't seen any like actual altcoins like just like any altcoin season this cycle. And I have like, and I think I long said about probably like 2024 or like early 2024. I have been talking about this like publicly that I don't think we're going to have like the same like DeFi season or like altcoin season like this cycle because because ETF is not converting the retail to like it's like two different channel nowadays, right? Now we have the TradFi channel, we have like the DeFi on-chain channel. Like the TradFi channel is driving by ETF, but like ETF is not converting the retail / institutional money like onto on-chain. Like just like there's no like a path there like in between. So ETF like basically like the ETF flows and the crypto native flows and the crypto on-chain flows are in two different liquidity pools. And we have seen projects like Ethena and then probably Ando like doing some just like CDFI stuff. But the more retail investors like buys ETF, that the less that they're like buying like all the like so like the more the more traffic flow into ETF, and then so I think the less of the liquidity will be there for the DeFi kind of like DeFi pool and like DeFi and the DeFi liquidity. So the interaction is just not there. Yeah, so like that's why I think we are lacking. So like this cycle, I remember clearly that last cycle, like we have seen so in the 2017 cycle, we have like ICOs, and then ICOs are the direct on-ramp for the marginal new money into centralized exchanges, right? And 2020, 2021, we have like both the DeFi and both DeFi and NFT. And both the DeFi and NFT, we have seen the new users like deposit fiat directly to the centralized exchanges, and centralized exchanges that change for stable coins like Ether and like directly withdraw that and then to participate to the crypto native speculations, like naming like DeFi farming, like NFT whitelisting, like whatever kind of stuff, right? And I remember clearly that in 2021, and then we are seeing like a massive pattern when there's a Coinbase withdrawal and went directly to OpenSea, and like many of these like direct withdrawal from like CEXs, like to do all to have like all different like on-chain operations, and then also like the company MoonPay was also like took off also due to this fiat on-ramp demand for aping into NFTs. I think like this cycle we only have like meme coin trading. Like if we think about like where are the marginal where are the marginal users for the on-chain activities, right? And then we have like meme coin trading, and prediction market users are not so like, because like the prediction market thing is like the OI is still relatively small, and then like the active traders, like many of them are just like browsing like the market itself. I think like the actual users, like the absolute number of like users like cannot compare what the DeFi Summer as like last time, or at least like not as good as like this like NFT craze. Yeah, so I think just like the traffic money are not doing many like DeFi stuff, right? And then so we are seeing just like the crypto residual money are like sitting on like DeFi. Like Hyperliquid you can also consider as DeFi, but it's not the same DeFi as 2021. Because like from like design perspective, like Hyperliquid has some improvement from like UIDS, but essentially is still kind of like similar, and so they have their own like HLP pool. Yeah, but it's still so I wouldn't consider Hyperliquid as a full-on DeFi, and like there's still some like centralized element around that. Yeah, yeah. So I think like that's just like a very like a long like thought process when I think about what happened to like DeFi like this cycle.
Yeah.
And also we don't have like any like new DeFi primitive like this cycle, right? And like Ethena, it is not a DeFi primitive. Ethena essentially it is like a hedge fund. So it's like a tokenized hedge fund, right? So it's like a tokenized hedge fund with like a single strategy, like that's the delta neutral strategy. And many of this like DeFi thing happened recently. Like the balancer one is more of like a DeFi problem, but the stream finance, it is not a DeFi problem. It is like an off-chain manager. It's like an off-chain strategy. So it's like the stream fi problem is like a transparency problem, because it is raising money on chain, but like using the money off chain. So it does not have the necessary like transparency there, and then so like that's why we have seen like the blow up there, right? So like to Tom's question, I think I'm still bullish in DeFi, but we really have to make like DeFi plug into like all the mess, like so we really have to think about what is the proper way to plug DeFi into the traffic distribution channel and into all probably like neobanking, and so it's just like we have to broaden the upper funnel for all the DeFi application, because currently like the upper funnel, it is not being broadened like this cycle for like most of the DeFi products out there. Like that's my feeling.
One interesting interpretation I hear about where things are headed with DeFi, and maybe not ETFs, but a good segue to the digital asset treasury companies, right? So the original Michael Saylor DAT maybe doesn't get into much of the DeFi space, but then when you look at stuff like SharpLink, that I know you guys have been involved, or Tom Lee, this capital is not going to just be idle. It's definitely going to be allocated to on-chain activities. And one of the interpretation I heard is that ultimately this would be the catalyst for much more interest in altcoin season in general and renewed interest in DeFi, because ultimately once we exhaust this interest in just having capital sucked into a DAT, you'll have retail looking to outperform what would be the premium that you can get on a DAT. So that could be a spark. But what do you think would be a lever otherwise? Like what do you see as a potential lever to get started a new DeFi or alt season from where we're at today?
I'm not sure whether we are going to have the same alt season, and like the return going to be very, like the return of the altcoin going to be extremely dispersed, and like that's just the reality, because the market is like maturing, and then like once like the market is maturing, and like the participants of like the market will be looking for some kind of like valuation model. I think like most of the altcoin, like there's just no proper valuation model out there. Like even if I have seen like a good valuation model when it comes to like DEXs or like perp DEXs, right? And then so you can basically do this like regression model on OI and like the market cap. But like many of these altcoins, they're basically just a speculative vehicle, and like how I can evaluate it, right? So like that is like the problem with most of the that is like the biggest problem when I just chat with my Wall Street long short funds, and then so like who are more sophisticated when it comes to capital allocation. I think like we can still do this like meme coin stuff, right? Basically like trade everything as like a meme coin or as like a pure like narrative like vehicle. Like that's fine. But like I think crypto this cycle, just like the altcoin this cycle, like not crypto specifically, because Bitcoin is probably in its own lane already, and like becoming like a macro asset. I think crypto this cycle, altcoin this cycle is just being triple kill by AI stock, and like triple kill by AI stock, like AI slash like tech stock, zero day options, and also prediction market. Because previously most of the altcoin is just serving the purpose of like pure speculation, but like now all the retail can speculate things that they can relate better, like they can understand better, and like they can probably entertain better, right? Because a prediction market essentially is a infotainment. So I think we are not going to see the same altcoin season as before, because like the altcoin energy, like the same altcoin energy has been diluted by so many other many other like vehicles out there. I think it's pretty apparent, like especially like this year, and like even last year as well. For our liquid team, whenever we want, so for our liquid team, because for our liquid side of the practice, and then they're not just trading crypto, they're more like a macro fund, right? And whenever they want to have like crypto exposure, and then so they will actually trade like CB stock or MicroStrategy, because it has much better volatility than Bitcoin. And so what worries me is Bitcoin probably already graduate from this speculative asset, but when it comes to most other asset in our space, and then so being like a speculative asset, if the volatility is completely crushed so if the volatility of what's supposed to be the speculative asset is totally crushed by the other financial instruments, and so what's the future of like this basket of asset, right? So that's what worries me a lot, and like even ourselves, like when we want to have like crypto exposure, we don't we don't trade native Bitcoin because the Coinbase stock and MicroStrategy stock and then Metaplanet stock has like much better volatility. Yeah.
This is something I wanted to ask you about. You've got a pretty solid, you know, rap sheet of experience in investing, picking founders. I saw you post something to Twitter recently that was talking about like dark triad personalities in crypto. I'm quite interested to hear more of your take on this dark triad issue that we've got.
Yeah, so I posted this, I think, 2022, right? And so I think like in our space, so as an early stage investor on our venture side, and when it comes to early stage investment, and it's all about the founder, and like there's like nothing else more than there's nothing else more than the founder itself. But like we have discussed, and like crypto is basically a kid between so crypto is the kid of like financial populism, consumerism, and then also probably like tech libertarian, right? And I think that historically we have seen like evil leaders in so this kind of like evil leaders, and I have been thinking hard on why we are seeing so many evil leaders like in crypto, like even more than finance somehow, because I finance like the close proximity, like the closest proximity is like the finance industry. But probably I wasn't there when in early stage of like finance, probably like that's also the same thing. But I think there's also another compounding effort, like this like compounding factors when it comes to like the emergence of like all these like evil leaders, is because the influencer, like just so this influencer and like social media culture, so that really just like facilitated them to be more like this, so really facilitate them to just like gain the cloud, right? And because like in our space is so because like in our space, and many of these things, like the average people, like the average crowd is always attracted to like who's getting the most attention regardless of the virtual. So like that's why like this like kind of like dark high personality, or like someone who's very performative, and then so like just like because like the narcissist or like the psychopath, and then so they can be extremely charming online as well, right? So and then like they probably tend to be over charming online, and then like because when it comes to online communication, like you are losing like all the nonverbal cues, and then so you basically cannot read their facial expression, so it's very, very hard for them to hear their tones. So like that's why all this like dark child personality, and so they all know how to put themselves in the center of attention really, really well. And I think the whole crypto space is basically largely built on top of like Twitter, right? And so if you are a dark child person, and like you know how to easily like disguise and then like just like hide the true nature like behind the screen, and then like, also the audience basically have like goldfish memory, right? And then so they don't remember like what happened like from last like 10 minutes, and so like this like makes it even harder to like distinguish them from like actual genuine like authentic founders. And then many of these are authentic founders, and they are kind of like quiet online as well, so like that's also like average selection. And so you will have like all this super loud dark, so super loud, and this performative like personality, and then so like they can get all the attention, and nowadays attention basically means like social proof, right? And so I think like that's why when it comes to like crypto, and then so we have seen so many these like dark personality like influencers like getting online, and then just like getting traction, and then like scamming people and over and over again.
Yeah, no, the internet is the perfect place for like your three, well, particularly like narcissism and psychopathy, Machiavellianism also, but like, yeah, the internet is like a really good forcing function of like, you can remove so many of the constraints that prevent that, like interpersonally. with normal human relationships. But moving away from the more dark side, Dovey, I was really interested in your longevity arc. I see that you've got like a Twitter alt that's focused on longevity and health. What started you down like longevity health rabbit hole, and what are like the top things that you think that you've found to be the most either rewarding or most like high leverage?
Okay, so I think we talk about at the core value principle level and why like the whole thing of like longevity and transhumanism is somehow can like tie back to the original cypherpunk spirit of like being like a self-individual, blah blah blah. I think like more for me and myself, yeah. So okay, I think it started from a pretty like just like I think it started like my passion for longevity, because I don't know it's longevity per se. So just my passion for discovering myself. Like so I started the whole journey from just purely discovering myself, and then it's a very like geeky interest, and also like thanks to my parents. So they actually we have many daughters in our family, and I was almost like pre-med as well, but my mom was like, don't be a doctor, and so it's a pretty bad lifestyle. But I still just have like a very high interest when it comes to anything about health, about biology, about human physiology, things like that. And also my parents have been like they keep my every hormone level and like health report and like everything like since when I had my first period. Like that's like back to probably a 14, 15, and I have this like giant database and this like Google chart about all my hormone level, and then so how they move along the day, like so how they move like over years and like things like that. And then also I began to analyze the trends and just like changes like in the spreadsheet, like which naturally evolved into a very like comprehensive like self-qualification, like self-quantification like projects I have. And then so I even built my health OS in Notion, and like now with like GBT I can basically dump like all the data there. And then so I've been trying all the things like CGM, like continuous like glucose monitoring, and like very early on Oura and also very like early on like metformin, like GLP, like SGLT2, like all that kind of stuff. And then so I have been taking metformin for like probably for a decade now. Yeah, so ever since college.
I thought people
And
stopped with metformin recently. It's became like for some reason I saw also Brian Johnson was mentioning that
I think like
his
yeah. So that's why in order to do things properly, you need to understand yourself well. And so for me, I just am microdosing metformin and like 500 milligram, and I think yeah. So like you have to understand your own just like biomarker and like all the physiology like baseline and like benchmark. And yeah, so like if you're like doing like heavy lifting every day, and then so you don't like, because like metformin is also like a micro stressor to you, right? And then so you don't want to overdose like metformin, and but it's really individual, so it's very like individual by individual. So like I just don't think there's like, okay, I can just listen to some influencer like talk about something. And also GLP-1 as well, right? Just that GLP-1 like I will not take GLP-1 myself, because so first of all like it's mainly for cosmetic purpose, like if it's for me, because I'm normal on like BMI, I'm very high muscle mass and all that. So and then just like, even for like cosmetic purpose, and if I really want to shed like 10 more pounds, and then so I wouldn't use a GLP-1. Like the issue being is like GLP-1 is, it is also like it is also the hormone, right? And then so if you just like taking GLP-1, and then so it will like suppress, and it will suppress and down regulate your like own capability to secrete like GLP-1. So I'm always in for a more like natural way, not like a quick hack, because I think like currently the problem with all this like longevity hype is like everyone is looking for like a quick hack, but there's nothing as this. And then when it comes to your like body and like when it comes to your body and long-term health. And so I think like today most people are being caught in like two major traps, and like the first trap is just like not knowing what to do, and then many just lack like even basic like health knowledge, and then probably coupled with unlimited resources. And then so I have seen my friends just like being like subscribed like insulin, so like insulin immediately, and then but when like early insulin resistance like could have been easily identified and like reversed like just with like lifestyle change, right? And because like the current healthcare system, it is not healthcare, it's basically like sick care, and many of the doctors don't even order like OGTT, like which can easily identify insulin resistance and like during just a routine checkup. And I think on the other hand, like there's also the like it's like a kind of a false hope, and like even for the one with like financial resources, and so they basically just want some like 10,000 stem cell treatment, like to various like fancy peptides, blah blah blah. I think essentially like just say the baseline for longevity is just back to the basics, right? And then so can you fix your sleep, right? And can you fix your sleep, like the quality sleep and like consistent exercise, and then like a very balanced diet, and just like don't overeat. And many of these are problem coming from over consuming. I think like if you can master like these like three areas, and then like that's already like good enough, right? And then so probably on top of that, like you can do like supplements, and you can do like fancy stuff, like say for instance I have my sauna house like at the backyard, and I have my soft shell and I have my soft shell hyperbaric chamber at home as well. Like you can do all this fancy stuff, but like you have to fix your like basics first.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very, very common thing in not just like tech scene or people with high resources, but almost everywhere, is just like the superfluous effort that gets applied at these kind of like tiny things that don't really move the needle of like, oh, I'll get this supplement or I'll do this thing. And it's like, if sleep, exercise, and diet is not fantastic, you don't have a base to build anything on.
Yeah. Frankly, like I've seen like I have a few friends, wealthy crypto friends, who are they have all of the expensive gear. They take a lot of supplements, but they're kind of overweight and are not taking care
like
of.
what's the point, right?
What's the point, you know? And then try to do Ozempic to balance it. I was like it's like the retardation.
That is the thing. So field of, and this is something we're getting close to time now, Dovey, and I'll let you go because we'll run an outro in a bit, but I am interested. So, you know, Daniel was saying that you actually managed to live quite a balanced lifestyle, considering the amount of like stuff that you do. You know, even though I'm actually stunned that you have actually managed to acquire 15 years of data and do that. I'm so not that kind of person. So I actually struggle to relate. I get so caught up in more. I'm less of a data guy, put it that way. And so like the field of longevity can get pushed into like, you know, optimization a fair bit. What do you see as like the most important stuff like outside of like physical optimization that works in like the longevity stack?
I would say like brand house, like just like brand house is everything. And so so I think like the next step for me is like art and space, and then blah blah blah, and then so I will really dig into the two end spectrum of the brain, and one is the early development of the brain, and then from like age 1 to like age 5, and then like that's when before like all the pruning happen, and also towards the end of the brain, right? So like that's Alzheimer, like Parkinson, like all that. So I think like brain health is everything, because like we are basically manifestation of like the brain, right? And then so like that is the only important organ that so like just think about this as thought experiment. So I had this conversation with all my robotic company, and imagine if you're a human and then you can still keep like bare minimum like life whatever, but you have to only keep one organ like other than the brain, and then so like you will need to have the brain there, but like other than brain, and then what is the other organ that you want to keep, right? So it's your hand, it's your eyes, it's your leg, or it's your ear, it's your mouth, like whatever. So basically coming from this like elimination mental model, so can really help you to understand like what's important when it comes to your like body health. And then so Yeah, so like brand health is like definitely like absolutely important when it comes to when it comes to longevity. But that's a pretty big topic, right? And then so like there's like neuroscience and like there's like psychological development. There's also a lot of things related to our immune system as well. Like we have this brain gut like this like brain gut like axis. And then like all this like endocrine system is basically controlled by the brain as well. And but like there's also like environmental feedback loop for the endocrine like balance. And so I think just like I think at the end of the day, longevity is about just like so longevity is like a whole system work, and so it's very hard for me to pick. Like if I have to add something on top of my current stack, and it will be brand health. But I think the brand health part needs to start from like babies. It is not just like okay, so I can probably improve like because there's not a lot of things we can improve like currently because our prefrontal cortex is pretty much well developed, and you won't be able to produce more neurons, right? And so I really think it has to start from the baby. And but the thing is that there's literally like zero thing about guideline for like new parents about baby brain development, right? And yeah, so like that's something that I'm still learning, and so I have been talking with many professors out there on like the schizo. So like why guys have a much higher like tendency to like develop like schizo, right? But like women is much more prone to like depression. So like that's also relate to our brain structure, just like different gender like have like different like brain structure, and then also relate to our like hormonal so relate to our hormonal response, and yeah, so it's a pretty deep topic, and so I think I will spend my like once we like conquer the space, and then so I think in parallel I will just like I will start to spend more time on that area. Yeah.
Dovey, thanks so much for coming on the Frontier podcast. It's been amazing. Where do you want people to go find you on the internet, and what would you like them to go look at?
Yeah, and you guys can just go to X and like at doveywan.com. Also, just like at Dovey Wan is my first name. So my first name and my last name.
Fantastic. This has been great. All right, we'll run it.